Motorcycles and the Need for Speed. Presented by the Motorcycle Cafe.
Since the very first motorcycle appeared on the scene, manufacturers have been on a quest. A quest to produce the fastest motorcycle in the world. And just to be clear, this doco is about street legal, mass-produced road bikes, not prototypes or racing bikes. Of course, many riders believe this need for speed is a bit pointless, but producing this video proved quite interesting, and it's well worth watching right up until the very end. It's reported that the 1912 model 532cc Scott two-stroke motorcycle was the very first motorcycle to go 50 miles an hour, or 80 kilometers per hour. But this is simply not true. The Indian Big Twins, which were first introduced in 1909, did in fact achieve this milestone first. They were 988cc V-twins, which produced 7 horsepower. And a well-tuned one could actually reach a top speed of 55 miles an hour or 89 kilometers per hour. Then, in 1925, another significant milestone was achieved, when the 998cc V-twin Brough Superior SS100 made its debut. These motorcycles came with a written guarantee that it had been tested to meet or exceed 100 miles an hour or 161 kilometers per hour. Hence the name SS100. If you owned one, there was no need for anyone to ask you how fast your bike was, because its top speed was built into its name. In fact, George Brough himself achieved a top speed of 130 miles per hour or 209 kilometers per hour on a specially tuned one just 3 years later. However, the SS100 was ridiculously expensive, and it was not a mass-produced motorcycle. In fact, over the 15 years that they were produced, less than 400 were ever produced. However, the overall engine performance of the SS100 did remain relatively competitive right up until the 1960s. It wasn't actually beaten by a significant margin for top speed for 5 years, when in 1930 Henderson Motorcycles, who already had a bike which would go 100 miles an hour, released their special KL model. This bike was a 1301cc inline 4-cylinder, and it boasted many engine upgrades over their standard KJ model. These included a higher engine compression ratio, hotter camshafts and larger valves and carburetor. Its top speed was 115 miles an hour, or 185 kilometers per hour. Almost 20 years later, in the late 1940s, Vincent released their 998cc V-twin, the Black Shadow. While its top speed was only 5 miles an hour faster than the Henderson Model KL, its overall engine and chassis performance was vastly superior in every single way. And the Black Shadow had something that no other bike before it had, that being decent brakes. It had dual drum brakes on the front and the rear, meaning this bike not only outperformed and outhandled any previous motorcycle, it outbraked them as well. The Black Shadow's top speed of 120 miles an hour or 193 kilometers per hour remained competitive for 3 decades. And before any of you comment, what about the Vincent Black Lightning? This bike was a factory works race bike, made purely for racing, not street use. And while it is true that with the addition of lights at that time, they could be registered for street use, they only made about 30 bikes in total. So how anyone could class this bike as a production bike is beyond me. The fastest production motorcycle of the 1960s was, and this might surprise many of you, the BSA Rocket 3. Despite BSA's use of older technology, in one period road test, this bike was in fact clocked at a speed of 128 miles an hour, or 206 kilometres an hour. True fact. Not bad for a 750. Moving forward to the era when I first started riding road bikes, the 1970s. Most riders think that this bike was the fastest production bike of that era. But this wasn't the case either. The fastest production bike of the 1970s was this bike. Do you know what bike this is? If you said it's a Laverda Jota, you would be 100% correct. It was a 981cc inline triple, and its top speed was tested at 146 miles an hour, or 235 kilometres per hour. It's also worth noting here that the fully faired MV Agusta 850 SS Monza did have exactly the same top speed, but only a handful of these motorcycles were ever manufactured, making them extremely rare. During the next decade, the 1980s, top speeds gradually increased, with many different motorcycles claiming the crown of the world's fastest production bike. But they only claimed the title for a very short period before being knocked from their perch by a newer model. Some of these bikes included the 1984 Honda VF1000R, the 1984 Kawasaki GBZ 900R, the 1986 Suzuki GSXR 1100, and the 1989 Yamaha FZR 1000 X-Up. Then, in 1990, things changed pretty dramatically when Kawasaki released this bike, the Kawasaki ZX11, also known as the ZZR 1100. There were quite a few things about the ZZR which set it apart from most other motorcycles at that time. And I'm not just talking about the gaudy colour schemes which appeared on some later models. Its fairing was extremely aerodynamic, and its indicators or turn signals were integrated into the fairing, as was its headlight and brake light. It also featured ram air induction, and it was actually the very first production motorcycle to employ this induction system. The bike became known as the King of Speed, because for 6 years running, it held the title as the world's fastest production motorcycle, with a top speed of 176 miles an hour, or 283 kilometres per hour. Then, in 1996, Honda released the Blackbird, or CBR 1100XX. With a top speed of 180 miles an hour, or 290 kilometres an hour, the Blackbird reigned supreme, although by only a small margin. It was followed by the legendary Suzuki Hayabusa, or GSX 1300R, in 1999, which overtook it with a top speed of 194 miles an hour, or 312 kilometres per hour. The meaning behind the naming of the Hayabusa is a great story in itself. The word, translated from Japanese, means peregrine falcon, which is the fastest creature on Earth. Not only that, but the main diet of peregrine falcons is actually other birds. And you guessed it, this included blackbirds. But the really ironic thing is that the bird is actually faster than the bike. The Hayabusa may have won the Need for Speed war, but the bike actually brought that war to an end. Because from the year 2000, most manufacturers had an informal agreement to limit top speeds to 300 kilometers per hour, or 186 miles an hour. Maybe they thought that nobody really needed to go much faster than this 68-year-old man on a somewhat modified 1920 Indian Scout. But who knows? Then, in the late 2000s, MV Agusta, who took no part in this original agreement, released one of the most beautiful motorcycles ever built. This isn't really that surprising though, because it was designed by the very same man who designed the Ducati 916. They are both exquisite bikes, no question about it. To say MV Agusta knows how to build fast motorcycles would be a massive understatement. Because a while back, they won 17 500cc World Motorcycle Championships in a row. This bike was the F4 1000R 312. And similar to the Brough Superior, 70 years previous, its top speed was built into its name, 312 km per hour or 194 miles an hour, which is exactly the same top speed as the Hayabusa. Moving forward to 2023, let's have a look at all the current contenders. All these top speeds are GPS measured on stock standard machines. The Yamaha YZF R1M has a top speed of 320 km per hour or 199 miles an hour. The Aprilia RSV4 1100's top speed is exactly the same. The Kawasaki H2 has a top speed of 323 km per hour or 201 miles an hour. The Suzuki GSX-R 1000R will reach 326 km per hour or 203 miles an hour. And the BMW S1000RR has a top speed of 333 km per hour or 207 miles an hour.
Say what?
But at the moment, it's actually a tie between two motorcycles for the absolute fastest top speed. The Ducati Panigale V4R and the Honda CBR 1000 RRR. Both of these bikes will reach a top speed of 335 km per hour or 208 miles an hour. So there you have it.